My name is Kojayanks. I'm here with you for the next 2 hours. Now, the Minister of Energy, John Peter Amewu, has revealed that the concession agreement with Power Distribution Services, PDS Ghana Limited, was suspended after they discovered that there were fraudulent activities involved in the deal. Now, in a statement yesterday, signed by Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah, the decision was taken after some fundamental and material breaches were detected on the part of PDS. But speaking with me earlier on the AM show, the Energy Minister said the demand guarantees presented by PDS were not authorized. And he says the development came to light following a series of due diligence tests the guarantees were subjected to by ECG. Now, he added that the government of Ghana will further investigate and bring perpetrators to book.
Fraud in the execution of the payment security simply means that the payment security tendered was not conclusive and was not in accordance with the requirements and the specification that was required, and that it was not authenticated by the sources that were supposed to execute that agreement. The payment security that they provided and that alleged coming from the source execute the agreement, now denying that they have never executed such payment security.
So that's fraud. Oh, all right. So that is fraud.
That's fraud.
So basically, you suspect that PDS lied to the government of Ghana to get this contract? Well,
that evidence will come up. Yeah, I've made mention earlier on that the timing of the agreement was very key, and the date of execution of the agreement was one of the conditions for exercising the agreement. And so to make sure that the agreement takes effect, of course, MIDA, as the investing body or the investor, has a responsibility to make sure the agreement is executed. So whatever it takes them to make sure the agreement takes effect from the date that was stipulated. I think that was exactly what.
So what you're saying is that in order to stick to the timelines, government of Ghana agreed that we would sign a contract with a concessionaire that was yet to prove its securities to us. We agreed to do that just to meet a deadline?
No, don't forget, please. I stated earlier on that there were due diligence processes ongoing as the agreement is being executed. Even as we speak now, because there are still processes to be completed, ECG on its own as the owner of assets has a responsibility to continue doing those processes. So it is not a result of the timeline talk that doesn't trigger it. It is a process of ongoing engagement, which of course mandates the owner of the asset to do anything that claims its right to authenticate the validity of what document was submitted. So the fact that it has been established through the process, and that though the agreement was executed, the process of due diligence had not come to an end. And so that allows for further findings and details of the payment security to be examined. So it's an ongoing process.
Yes.
The agreement, again, as you are aware, has not been terminated.
Yes.
It's been suspended. And so the suspension of this agreement gives the path for all the stakeholders involved to engage in further discussion. Okay, so we have suspended it because government also considered the assets of Ghanaians very important. And in order not to put these assets in the hands of people who claim they have the financial capability to execute the project, it's proper government with a suspension on that. So this is really what I'm saying.
How long is this investigation going to take?
Not too long. I'm sure we will come back to give Ghanaians.
Are we talking weeks, months, or days?
Don't forget the issue of fraud would have to involve some elements of security involvement for alleged fraud. And so those responsibilities, of course, will be coming from the security agency.
Right. Now, we know that before this suspension came up, there was an existing issue with PDS regarding payments. The independent power providers were up in arms because they were owed some money. And there was a suggestion that there are some payments due from PDS. What's the status of that? Have you collected that money?
That has been so, yeah.
So they don't owe any money at the moment, at the point of the suspension?
Not as I know.
Right. So now that ECG is stepping back in, I mean, the reason why a concessionaire was a good idea was because ECG had some massive inefficiencies and problems with their own operations. Now that they are taking over, are we to expect a return to those inefficiencies?
Well, I don't know whether during this period, a few periods that PDS has acted, if the efficiencies have been clearly eliminated. I wouldn't know. Maybe you, as a consumer from that perspective, what you could tell them. ECG, as we know, of course, we all agree that there have been some high elements of inefficiency, losses. And so they're coming back during this period. What it means is that there needs to be high level of supervision to make sure the stability of power that we enjoy.
Right. So Ghana will further investigate and bring the perpetrators to book. Meanwhile, an economist with the Institute of Fiscal Studies, Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie, says government must properly investigate the abnormalities which led to the suspension of the contract with PDS.
Because if you look at the cost that government would have incurred if he had continued, then that would have been a bigger problem than this. Again, it raises questions about due diligence. Yesterday, the Minister of Information talked about due diligence, that they suspend this PDS agreement because they have exercised due diligence. But the question is, why didn't you exercise due diligence at the time of the signing of the contract? So I think going forward, and these are some of the things that we have been seeing in the energy sector. It looks like the energy sector, there's something going on that we all don't know, because already there is an arrears of 14 billion Ghana cedis, which can finance free SHS for the next 10 years. And so we should be very diligent in signing contracts. Yesterday, or Monday, the Minister of Finance said we had already gone into agreement to sign certain contracts for the provision of electricity that we do not need. Just 2 days after that, we have PDS contracts being suspended because of some detected anomalies. Why, as a country, would we just get up and go and sign contracts without exercising due diligence, without opening our eyes, without knowing where it will lead us, before we come and sit down and go back to the drawing table, revise the notes and say, oh, wait a minute, it looks like we signed a wrong contract. And so the energy sector, the contracts going on, somebody somewhere is taking his percentage and enriching himself at the expense of the whole nation. And we cannot continue to do that. You mentioned that we must get to the bottom of the matter. Whatever we have to do, I think that somebody must be arrested. I think that
who is that person?
Whoever we catch.
That someone or some persons within the energy ministry misled the country with this PDS contract.
You can say that, because what is anomaly? Anomaly is you tell me A and I go to find out it's B. That's anomaly. So somebody wasn't truthful with us. So let the investigations go on. When we come to the conclusion of the matter, let's prosecute.
Right, fascinating revelations there following the statement issued by the information minister just last night. So PDS is suspended, the contract is suspended. ECG steps in to provide the distribution service for the nation. Now, right now, we can go to Parliament in just a few moments. We'll be able to go to Parliament, where the minority is calling for an audit into the contract signed with PDS. My colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson has been keeping an eye on events as they've been transpiring there. We will go and connect with him later. But I'll tell you what else happened in Parliament today. MP for Adansi Asokwa, K.T Hammond, has revealed that the Energy Committee raised concerns about the contract, but government introduced some conditions forcing them to approve the agreement. Now, he supports the parliamentary inquiry and wants government to prosecute those found culpable.
Surprised to the extent of what has come up, but not surprised that something was going to come up. I mean, you
knew that something was going to come up?
Well, I didn't know, but I had a hunch. The thing about, I tell you personally, I have not for one day been happy about this PDS, ECG, Hiho, Baliho. I've not been happy at all.
No. Was the
we can, I'm not sure when you said that our government has said that, I'm not sure that is on record. For many years during the Kufuor administration, there were some efforts to take over ECG the same way PDS appeared to have taken over. I think some senior ministers were implacably opposed to the concept. It didn't take off. We didn't have that. Going into what has happened now, I'm sure some of us, not I'm sure, I'm clear in my mind, some of us were clearly opposed to the idea. On the Energy Committee, those of us who were in the Energy Committee and myself as the ranking member when we were in opposition, the matter came up many times, and we made it pretty clear that we didn't think it was a good idea. Indeed, I tell you, as a ranking member, on occasions that the Millennium Challenger, the MEDA, you call them, wanted us to visit India, visit Uganda, and all sorts of countries, I made it clear that we were not interested in it because it was a bad idea. It was on record. Some of us, I think, I suspect it was the same point that the ECG was also pursuing. ECG had made it abundantly clear that it wasn't a good idea for them to be divested of their interests, their supervision of the national asset, indeed, of their interest in ECG. Well, that is what you say. No. ECG was hamstrung by a panoply of factors. I mean, a very good chunk, a fundamental, formidable problem ECG encountered was to the extent of non-payment of the bills by the MDCs, which was the responsibility of government. Governments never paid up for the use of power by these institutions, to the extent that ECG was financially crippled. The argument was that if government was going to make good the payment of these bills, ECG was going to be on a good footing. That was the basis of the flawed argument that was canvassed initially. We said that, okay, or ECG said, make sure that you give us our money. We would perform right. Of course, they have many other problems. But fundamentally, what is at stake in this business is money. And government won't give governments. It's not, governments haven't, they haven't had a... Well, no, you're talking about now. It's not, government has been in power for 2.5 years, not 3 years. We're talking about prehistoric matter, Neanderthal period. This has been a matter that's been outstanding for a very long time. Governments do not pay ECG. So an idea was crafted that, okay, fine, we'll get PDS, whatever, some outside company to take over. And they say, but then the finances that ECG has been complaining about all along are now going to be ring-fenced, the debt's going to be ring-fenced. And we haven't quite understood that concept. Why not let ECG, look, that is history now. Because the point is that whatever it was, the satisfaction and the happiness of a lot of people notwithstanding, this thing was passed through. But the worry, when I say yes and no, something might turn up on this. The worry is when we looked at the Energy Committee, when we looked at the strength of the consortium that had been put together to take over ECG, we panicked. We genuinely panicked and asked all sorts of questions about this. Then, as if it wasn't enough, when it came to the time that PDS was supposed to be taken over, we realized that they hadn't met the criteria for taking over. there were so many items that were sitting on the conditions precedent. These were conditions to be satisfied before they took over. I mean, some guarantees, some monies. And again, we weren't sure that those things had actually been. No, we do not. No, nonsense. No, committee didn't look on at all. The committee informed those who were responsible. In the end, our understanding was that, all right, the documents have been reviewed and that they have powers. I mean, those, the committee, ECG and all those people who were responsible for that, there were powers to allow some time. Some of the condition precedent had been converted to conditions subsequent, and that they could do it. I mean,
so
although belatedly, you know. So that has been the state of affairs. Even though, as I said, some of us have been very unhappy with the way. There are other things that we've known about the challenges ECG is faced, even with their new status, with respect to collecting the money from PDS and the extent to which PDS has been an impediment. You can hear from the way I'm going on that I have not been the chairman of their fan club. I simply can't handle the way the PDS thing had gone about. They're taking this whole thing away from ECG and national assets. I haven't been happy.
Right, so we can now go to Parliament, where our man Kwesi Parker-Wilson has details on this PDS discussion. Kwesi, if you can hear me, bring us all the way up to date. What's the latest in Parliament? Right, I believe we might have a connection.
Right, so Kojo, just a while ago, Parliament went on a break just for an hour. This was before the contributions put together by both the minority leader and also the majority leader as far as the 2019 budget review statement is concerned. Now, with the minority leader, that is Haruna Odusuwan, he was contributing to the floor. He sought to waded into the conversation ongoing at the moment, and he called for a full-blown parliamentary inquiry into the PDS contract and, of course, the circumstances under which government has suspended the contract with a PDS. The members of the Energy Committee seem to be in agreement with the call by the minority leader. And just a while ago, we spoke to K.T Hammond, who had earlier indicated that they raised concerns. Now, the ranking member on the committee, Adam Wakilu, when I spoke to him, said similar thing, but for him, he went further to say that the reason why government went on with this agreement is because some persons or government appointees colluded with PDS to, get some, alleging that you have some interest in the process, and that is why they looked on for the contract to be awarded to a PDS. So we can listen to him.
This security should have been provided, verified, authenticated before the handing over of our assets on 1st March to PDS. We, the minority, have called on that. Civil society organizations, including IES, have called on government that the security provided by this miracle cannot be factual. It is paper security, not backed by liquidity. Whether it is true. So government all this while did not take the minority and the civil society organization serious.
So it's vindicated, clearly.
So it's a vindication of the minority. And we believe that there is more to it than just the security.
But you think some people colluded?
We have also
with PDS.
You realize that they've been alleged fronting of individuals on behalf of the beneficial owners of the 51% local participation.
That's something you asked for right from the start.
Yes. They've never disclosed. Yeah. There have been publications linking to some officers and government and family and friends. And they've been alleged that there are some friction in terms of sitting down to agree. That could be a trigger for the government now going to scrutinize the security, because government should have known long time that what has been provided was not authentic. They should have known, especially when there have been outcry from minority, from civil society organization. Government should have done all this thing before even handing over.
Now it has been suspended. This agreement has been suspended. What steps are the minority going to take to ensure, to hold government to account as if that is exactly what's in the purview?
Very soon, we'll be coming out with our press statement or press conference. So we start digging in, and when we release it, you'll get the facts. This is still fresh.
Right, so Kwesi, I mean, it appears that this is the view of the minority. It's been expressed by several of them. But at this point, what exactly is the way forward? What if it turns out after investigation that there is indeed fraud? Are we hearing what Parliament intends to do to fix the problem long term?
No, for Parliament, I mean, they are clear that any individual involved in this should be prosecuted. If you are found culpable, you should be prosecuted. But the point has been made that we need to allow government to do the work, because already there's an inquiry, there's an investigation into the matter. And the information minister, when I spoke to him earlier this morning, he made it clear to me that, in fact, after the investigation, when they detect some kind of fraudulent activities that went on as far as the contract is concerned, they will abrogate the contract, they will terminate the contract. But for now, as we know, ECG has now taken possession of our assets, and they are now distributing power to the consumer. So we should hold on, allow the committee to investigate the matter, and when they are done, they will take it from the next step.
So is Parliament itself identifying any culpability? Does Parliament itself feel that they also perhaps are to blame here, because they are the ones who approved this contract in spite of the fact that due diligence was not complete? They are the ones who were told that conditions precedent are now conditions subsequent, and they still approved the deal in spite of these anomalies. Do they blame themselves?
Right. Right. Not at all. They don't want to concede that indeed they did a poor job. I spoke to K.T Hammond, Adam Mutawakilu, and some other members of Parliament, and they are putting government on the blame board, that it is government who forced them to approve the contract, because upon raising series of concerns, and as you said, they were supposed to ensure that a PDS or Miracle meets the criteria before they take over. They raised that concern, but government said that they should give them the leeway. Whilst they take over, the investigations can still continue, and that is why some of them say we should still commend government for what they've done, because after the awarding the contract to Miracle and PDS, they still went on ahead to investigate the background and the guarantees and the securities that they provided as far as this contract is concerned. So for them, they cannot be blamed. If anyone is to blame, it's government. But however, we need to commend government for what they have done.
Wilson, thank you very much for bringing us that update, and no doubt this story is only in its fledgling stages, and so we'll be hearing more from Parker Wilson and members of Parliament.